Hello there. This is Jen T. Grace. I am the host of Purpose Beyond the Page, and I am here with Christy today. And we're going to have, I'm hoping, a nice deep conversation. And the topic today is from terror to transformation. And you'll see in the graphic that transformation is the thing that is underlined because there's so much transformative information. And like just your story is incredible. And you have a book because this is Purpose Beyond the Page. So, I have a lot of things that I want to talk to you about. I'm going to hold up your book right now while I ask you if you can just kind of give those who are watching or listening just a tiny bit of background information about yourself and what you do in this world.
Sure. I am a retired speech language pathologist and massage therapist, and spend my days training my dogs and writing, learning to write better, and other creative projects. In 1977, it was in between undergrad and graduate school. I was working as a summer intern at Mobil Oil Corporation in New York City in the employment office. And one particular day, a woman came in, applied for a job. She was kind of odd, but we had a lot of odd people come in off of 42nd Street. She wanted to take her application out of the office. I would not let her because that was not our policy. We had a little bit of an altercation, and I grabbed her application, and she left. She ran out. An hour later, I was walking away from my desk to get a cup of coffee, and a bomb exploded in the office. I was blown across the room. I found myself beneath this giant plant on the floor. The long story short, the woman that walked in to apply was actually a terrorist, and she left the bomb in an umbrella stand or in the coat rack about 10 feet away from my desk. So the timing of me walking away basically saved my life. Mm-hmm. So my story after that this was in the 70s where mental illness was not spoken about. PTSD was not a diagnosis, or for trauma at least. Head injury was not a consideration. And I was kind of left to navigate the world with head injury symptoms and PTSD as we now know it. Mm-hmm. So my book is my story of navigating the world. It has trauma in it. It might be triggering for some people, but there's a lot in there about coping strategies, how I found my way. There's some humor and sarcasm in it as well. It's not all horrible. But this book brought me to where I am today.
And I find it and I've heard your story a number of times. We've worked together. I have read your book, and yet it just still always surprises me that at the time of this happening, that just PTSD was not a thing, and head injuries were not a thing. It's just so wild to try to comprehend that they just weren't a thing at the time, because it's so prevalent and so, I think, well known at this point and feels funded and researched and all of that stuff. So to have had this happen to you before that was even, recognized makes your journey of resilience and kind of transforming it and get through this so much more heroic in a way, because you had to figure it out on your own. You had no support, which I know that you kind of write about as well.
Yeah. I mean, and now, the word trauma, PTSD, trauma informed, you hear those words a lot now.
Everywhere.
I really didn't hear those words until 2015. And in fact, after the bombing, and then I had 3 years of being interrogated and then had to testify in a murder trial against the terrorists. The common response to me was, get over it. Time will heal all wounds. Don't be dramatic. And what we know about PTSD now is that you can't just get over it, put it aside and move on. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I know that you were a reluctant author, perhaps we could call it. So you, like, when I hear your story, and again, having just like heard it in different formats, it's like obviously you would write a book, but that was not obvious for you. So what was the catalyst to say, oh, maybe I should actually put this in the form of a book?
Well, in 2015, after I had had EMDR, my therapist at the time said to me, you ought to write a book because your story is very interesting. It's historical. I think it will help a lot of people. And I initially just kind of tossed that aside. And I was like, well, who would want to read a book about me? Seriously. But I thought about it. And, at that time, there were more and more terrorist attacks happening across the world. Sadly, more and more violence occurring. And I started thinking that my story is still very relevant because I'm seeing people either directly involved with this or a family member. And there's the news reports about it. And the next day, the news goes on to the next report, and people are just left. And they don't have supports, and there are a lot more supports now, but they're just left. Yeah. And I thought, I do need to write this. So it took me 8 years to get through it. And I shared it with a couple of friends of mine, my initial draft, and they were like, oh my gosh, you have to publish this. So then I had heard about Allie, and she helped me turn it into a memoir.
Yeah, which is great. And so for those, paying attention, Allie is my co-host on Unscripted with Allie and Jen that we do as a LinkedIn Live once a month. So you are a collaboration between the two of us. And then Bridget McGowan of Press 49. So she's the publisher. We helped in the marketing side. Allie helped in the writing side. So I feel like, to me, it was just such a dream to see everybody in person at your book launch in October.
It's so the most dynamic team ever. I couldn't ask for 3 more brilliant, innovative people to stand behind me in this journey, or stand with me in this journey.
Yeah, and we just certainly have your back. That is for sure. And I know, so like you didn't really plan on writing the book. And so it's almost like there's these series of things in your life that you didn't plan for, but now you're here. And the other is starting a business at 70. So can we kind of like go into that? Because the title of this podcast is Purpose Beyond the Page. So it's not just the book, but it's like, what are the things that the book brings to you, you bring to it, you're helping serve people. And like when we were working together on the marketing side of things, I feel like I felt like it was going to snowball into something bigger. Maybe you didn't feel that in the moment, but
I was so overwhelmed.
So I'm curious, just kind of like hear like this whole like, oh wow, now I have a business.
Yes. As I've said to you before, like I didn't have a business plan. You're supposed to have a business plan. And I did not have one because I was not thinking of having a business. When I first met you, I've also said that I've always just left the door open for opportunities. And I was looking for a publisher, and I was also researching into marketing, and it seemed pretty overwhelming to me. And there were lots of people out there willing to market my book for a very high price. And I was not really sure what marketing really encompassed and how could I evaluate if these people were doing what I needed them to do for my book. So that's why I enrolled in your course. It came across my desk and I was like, I need to do this. And it started out with branding. And I was not even sure what branding was. And the whole program, which is the Aspen program, it was extremely detailed, which I love because I love to know what comes next. But at the same time, it was really overwhelming to me because it was all new vocabulary, new everything. And I thought, I am never going to do this. And I also thought, one of the venues was podcasting, and I thought, I'll never do that. Well, guess what?
Here we are.
And I'm about getting ready to start my own podcast. So it's kind of mushroomed, but going through that process, it was very interesting because, first of all, I want to say that I think every person who is retired should brand themselves whether or not they have a business. Because all my life I identified as being a speech language pathologist. And I kind of branded myself, but I wasn't doing that, having that role anymore. And it wasn't, I kind of assumed that I was the role, but I wasn't the role. There were other things about me that I really needed to look at. And I'm a little different in that respect because when the bombing, or after the bombing, I totally lost my identity. I did not know who I was. And in fact, I changed my first name. It was Jane, and I changed it to Christiane and totally redefined who I was, what I liked, because everything was just gone. And so I did that, but then retiring, I still was like, well, who exactly am I? And had to, one of the best exercises that I did, which was in your program, was to ask people that I knew online and personally, give me 3 traits of my personality that you think of when you think of me. And I was amazed at the responses because they were not words that I had used for myself, like compassionate, patient, really? So it was really an eye opener, and it really helped me through figuring out branding myself. Really, what do I have to bring to the table that I can use to help other people? And so I got through with that. The book was published in September, and I started just doing some podcasts to get myself out there, to tell my story, because my goal became increasing awareness of PTSD so other people didn't feel alone. I also felt that employers do not understand PTSD, trauma, and that sometimes work related issues are related to trauma rather than laziness or just not caring. Because I had experienced some of that myself. So I kind of just got, I'm going to be an advocate. And then it turned to be doing more public speaking, especially in the cognitive areas, because I do still have memory and executive functioning problems. And I've learned a lot of strategies, both from being a speech language pathologist and from living the dream of cognitive impairment.
Should be a hashtag.
I've been very successful and I've gotten along quite well. And most people, if they don't know my background, do not know the degree of impairment that I have. So you can function, but you just have to be willing. And that's another part of my platforms is you have to be willing to do it. You have to want to put in the work and take responsibility for your healing.
So when you go back to like that initial level of overwhelm about, I wrote this book and now I realize there's so many other things that I have to do to get the book out into the world, which is the branding. It's, figuring out, is it the advocacy route you're going? Is it the speaking route? Are you going to offer new things? Like, so when you're trying to figure out all of that, how did you kind of move through that place of overwhelm? Because I think, in speaking to the cognitive side of things that you're talking about, like you detail it in the book in terms of kind of like the severity of things. And yet to me, it's like, if you are able to start a new business at 70, work your way through all of this with whatever cognitive impairments exist, to me, for someone who might be watching this and listening to your story being like, wow, like that's incredible. She was able to kind of like move through that. I'm curious, like, is there something that you did to kind of move through that? Because I think it's the overwhelm that's like the block point for people.
Making lists and scheduling things
So simple.
It's very simple. But if it's on paper and it's on a calendar And I'm a writer. I mean, I use Google Calendar and but for me, physically writing something, it really helps my brain. And I would plan things out for like 3 months. And also honoring if I could not meet what I wrote to do, I gave myself grace. But if I had that kind of, all right, I'm going to work on this for the next month and focus my time here. And that's how I just put it into smaller chunks. Because even now I'm writing a second book. I am on the last couple of chapters, and then we're going to start doing more editing. I've got that going. I am doing the background work to start a podcast. I'm now going to be working on promoting my business on LinkedIn in a more efficient way. So I've got like a lot of things going on, plus my dog training, plus my private life. There's like a lot of stuff going on. So, I'm retired, but not really retired. I'm very busy.
I don't think this sounds like retirement at all. Yeah.
So, but again, putting everything into small chunks.
And I'm going to go granular for a minute because I feel like this almost requires granular. When people are putting things in small chunks, like give me an example of, like you're currently, working on launching your own podcast. So what would an activity today look like? Because I think sometimes what happens with people is that the chunk on the paper says launch a podcast, which is not helpful. So like, can you kind of like maybe do a little more detail on how you would break that down?
Yep. And today's kind of a good example because I was sick last week and did not do anything. So, you like fall a week behind and you're like, oh my God, you're really not that bad, but I feel like it's horrible, right? Because I'm not up to where I want to be. So today, for the podcast, I'm going to review some video comments about some of the things that I'm putting into high level. And that's all I'm going to do. I'm not going to go any further with that. That's the plan for today. I'm going to spend, probably might take me an hour, maybe a little bit longer, but that's the piece that I'm going to do today. I'm going to finish writing chapter 13 today. And then when that's done, it's done. I don't move on to chapter 14. I'm not burning myself out. Tomorrow I'll start working on a little bit more on the podcast, depending on what I do tonight or what the feedback is what will determine what I'm doing tomorrow. Friday, I will be going to our weekly meeting. So to kind of catch up and make plans for what I'm going to do next week. So I do a little bit of something every day, but I'm really specific about what exactly I'm doing. Because if I just wrote podcast, I could spend all day and sometimes not even doing much of anything because I'm not focused enough.
Yes.
On what that chunk is, In fact, yesterday I spent a good part of the day just figuring out how I was going to catch up. And made a plan for, all right, I'm going to do my writing here. I've got to do some posting, social media stuff. I'm going to do that on Saturday, so and I don't worry about it until Saturday.
Yep.
And by having it on my schedule, on my calendar, I really don't worry about it because the more stuff that's in my brain, the more workable space is taken up. So if I can get it down on paper and away, then I just look at the paper and do what it says.
Yeah. Which is nice. It's almost like having a boss, except it's yourself.
Yeah.
Because I think that's where everyone struggles is that, we put these big Herculean things or underestimate the amount of time something's going to take.
Oh, I always do that. Or I put too much on the schedule. That's
so what do you do when that happens?
Well, I know that it always happens, first of all.
Self-awareness, half the battle.
And there are those things that have to get done, and those things get done first. And there's always those things that can be carried on to the next day. And I just carry them over. So I make sure that the things that have to get done get done.
Mhm.
Sometimes the other things are just reminders of things that I need to do, but probably aren't going to happen that day. And I don't feel guilty about not getting them all done,
Mm.
because sometimes it takes longer, or sometimes you just get a lot of phone calls or an email that you have to answer, or there's a problem that you need to solve. So you can't do what you had planned to do.
How do you think you got to that place of not allowing yourself to feel a certain way by not completing the task on your list for the day?
Hmm. Um, well, I know I can't do everything. As much as I would like to think I'm Superwoman, I
Mhm.
am not. I also know that your body, your brain, your creative nature needs rest.
Mhm.
And I think over time, I have learned that if I go and go and go and push myself and don't
Mhm.
give myself the space and grace, I am not as efficient
Mhm.
as I could be. I end up spending a lot of time spinning my wheels.
Mhm. Yeah.
So now I give myself the time, most of the time. Sometimes I fall short of that, but give myself the time to say, all right, I'm done with this today.
Mhm. Mhm. And the permission to be done with it if it's not fully complete. I think that's where, we kind of get caught as people. And in regards to kind of the whole side of books, as you are experiencing, it's like a giant spider web. Like one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. Everything's interconnected, but it can be very chaotic feeling at the same time. So it like requires a system.
And the other thing is that there's no end to it.
Yeah.
I don't say that in a negative way. I'm saying
Yeah.
that my book is going to be out there forever. My
Mhm.
second book is going to be out there forever.
Mhm.
It's not like I only have till next week to market it and to market myself.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
going to be, I'm going to be around for a while. I have plenty of time to get this out.
Yes, which allows for different strategies to unfold
Yes.
because you are not cramming because it came out in September, you had 2 launch parties in October, and then you could have just put all of your energy effort into that and then been like, "Oh, the book's just gonna sell itself," which we all know that the book doesn't just sell
No.
itself. So the fact that you're thinking long term of like, "Okay, yeah, this is for the rest of my time on this earth and then beyond that." Um, I think that really puts things into better perspective because then you can look at it and say, all right, if I just do an hour this week on my book because of other commitments I have, and I know that you're, really big in the dog training space, like that is a huge time commitment for you. And so I'm sure there's times where you're like, you know what, the book's going to get a little bit of attention this week. And like when you know that it doesn't all have to happen today, it doesn't have to all happen yesterday or tomorrow, it's like, oh yeah, like it's so much easier to kind of look at it from that perspective.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I learned from you is just to, spend 15 minutes doing this,
Mhm.
planning something, just don't spend 3 hours on it. Just do 15 minutes, and I was looking at podcasts, for example. That was one of the things was I could go down a rabbit hole for that big time,
Mhm.
and you had said to me, spend 15 minutes a week looking
Mhm.
at podcasts.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
See if you might be. And that's what I did. And you know what? It worked.
See, and you can keep doing that 15 minutes a week for the rest of time, and it will continue to work because it
Yeah.
doesn't have to happen all at the same time. And I think that's what stresses us out. It's like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. And there's all these different things, but they all do require our time or our money to pay someone else for their time.
Right. And the right podcast just seemed to come to me.
Mhm.
That's the thing. I think if I spent 5 times the amount of time, I would still come up with the same results.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know, the the right podcast just come. So
Mhm.
that works for me.
It's like a law of like diminishing returns almost. Right. And then there's also like Parkinson's law, which is like it's going to take you the time that you have available to do the task. So if you have 8 hours to do, it's going to take you 8 hours. If you have an
That's
hour, it's going to take you an hour. It's just
true.
how things work. So I like that you're really efficient, intentional, and mindful of what you're doing and when you're doing it, because I think that just lends itself for so much activity to be happening beyond the book itself, which is very exciting.
It is. It is. And I love doing all these things.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, I was kind of lost when I stopped working. But this is very fulfilling. And I'm always, sometimes I'm frustrated, but honestly, I love learning all these new things.
Mm-hmm.
It's great for an aging brain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's good to keep up with technology.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm finding I'm not the only person that gets frustrated with stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's not all age related.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's good. It's very good. And I feel kind of renewed at starting all these new projects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the exciting part, because it's all of like what the newness can bring. And do you feel a sense of, I don't want to say freedom, but something in that range where, because you have retired and you don't have to be doing this. So it's almost like you're bringing a different energy to the table, because this is like completely voluntary. Like this does not, like your ability to eat or clothe yourself is not dependent on what you do with regard to this book.
Correct. And it's very liberating. It's really wonderful. I am so lucky to have a very supportive spouse.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I've spent a good deal of money on learning skills and getting support to get where I am. But, I also don't know a lot about to pay for experts, experienced people to help me. And I was kind of complaining to my husband the other day. And I said, I don't know if I really want to continue I want to continue with this podcast, but we've already spent a good deal of money and I'm only halfway done. And I thought I would be done by now. And he was like, just do it.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever costs, it costs, because you want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't fly, if the business doesn't fly, it doesn't fly. But at least you did it and you're following something you really want to do.
Yeah.
And I was like, yay, Bill.
Yeah. You got a good one.
I do.
You're a resident videographer for your events.
So, that to me was like, okay, I don't need to be overly concerned and I can just do this.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I really don't like to put a stress on our finances either. Mm-hmm. It's really, but he was like, just go ahead and do what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because some people might be doing a 365-day trip around the world in their retirement and spending, multiple six figures to do that. And there are people like yourself who are like, yeah, I can still travel. I can still do things. I can still do the hobbies that bring me joy and the passions that bring me joy. And I can also start this new thing without the stress and the pressure of it having to perform, but also knowing it will perform because you're doing it. You're taking the appropriate steps for that to happen.
Oh, thank you.
I think so anyway.
It just all takes time, if you want to build it. And I think about, years ago, I had a private practice in speech pathology and it took time to build. It was the internet wasn't even a thing then. So it was all word of mouth and local. And it took a lot of work to get that going. But there was also a lot of planning to make that work. And I remember that. And just now the world has changed and the way that you market has changed. So I need to go with the new ways.
Yeah. And I think that consistent daily action of just doing something toward the goal and just showing up, it is astonishing that just showing up is so much of the equation. Like I feel like just being in the right room, even if you don't have like a role to serve other than being a member, a guest, someone in an audience, like even sometimes something as simple as that is enough to kind of get you to the next step.
Yeah. Yep. And, I've been a guest on several podcasts and my goal was to just kind of get my word out there and increase my visibility. But I have learned something about myself and the world from being on every single podcast. Based on the questions that I've been asked, the discussions that we've had. They've been really enlightening and wonderful and just kind of helped me brand myself even further.
Yeah. Yeah, and like what I love is like the first thing I said to you when we got on, I was like, "Oh, you're the color of your shirt because you're matching your brand." So, like it's something sometimes so simple, like being consistent. Like consistency, I think is the key. So something as simple as consistently wearing the same color where people just associate that color with you. And then they go to your website and they're like, "Oh, there she is in the same color." Right? Like just little things really kind of stand out to people and it doesn't always have to be these earth-shaking type of, efforts that really kind of move the needle.
No, it can be very simple, but as you said, consistent.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. When you think of the podcasts that you've been on, is there one in particular that kind of stands out or like one question or something that like really made you think differently that you're like, "That came out of left field. I wasn't expecting that."
I think there probably have been a lot of those questions.
Mm.
Um, I was on one very recently, it was just like a week ago, and it was really very interesting because it was a podcast that dealt primarily with addiction
Mhm.
recovery. And we talked a lot about how trauma can lead to addiction, although I've not had any substance abuse personally, but it was just a really interesting discussion about trauma in general.
Mhm.
Um, and that was kind of enlightening. It was a
Mhm.
good discussion. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, there's I can't think of any other questions offhand, but
Mhm. Yeah, just little rabbit holes to kind of
yeah.
like explore. If you're now thinking of like how you're defining yourself, so you had the speech pathologist as like that was the thing that you were known for. You had your private practice. You were kind of branding yourself that way. Now you're in this whole different environment. Even like with your training, right? With your dogs, like you have different identifiers there and different titles and different ways that you show up because you have responsibilities in regard to that. What are you or how are you feeling right now in terms of how you're defining this, this new iteration of yourself? Or not even really new at this point, but newer iteration.
I'm feeling very confident,
Mm.
um, which I really love.
Yeah.
Um, I'm feeling very passionate about what I'm doing or what I want to do, what I'm about to do.
Mhm.
I feel like I am definitely on the right track.
Mhm.
And, you always wonder what your purpose is. And certainly, one question I always had was, why was I spared
Mm.
after that attack? It could have been me that was killed. The man standing by my desk was killed.
Mhm.
Um, why me? Why happened the way they happened so
Mhm.
that I lived? And what is
Yeah.
my purpose for living, really?
Mhm.
Um, and when you're involved in a field like speech pathology, you can get involved, at the national, the state level, get involved with associations. And I never did that.
Mm.
And I never was interested in doing that either. But I always felt like there was something I should be doing.
Mhm.
And now I know that what I'm doing now is what I should be doing.
Mm. That's really amazing. It's such
Yeah.
a like full circle because you're making sense out of something that really otherwise is really nonsensical.
Yes. And I believe that all of my professional experience that I bring to the table, as well as my lived experience, makes me who I am and makes me be able to do what I want to do
Mhm.
and sets me apart from other people because I am not a therapist. I am a speech language pathologist, so I can deal with the cognitive parts of
Mhm.
PTSD, but um, I bring to the table lived experience in
Mhm.
addition to working with a lot of people who have had trauma um, and communication problems. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think the power of lived experience is not emphasized enough. I think we're so focused as a society on education, intellect, just the things that like, that you're paying for to gather, like degrees and things like this. And sometimes the lived experience is the thing that kind of like takes the cake on all of the ways in which you can relate and help support people.
Absolutely. And, one of the things that I have come to realize is that there are places and people that say that they are trauma informed, and perhaps they've had some training, but they are not acting as if they are trauma informed. And speaking from someone who was an employee, there's a huge difference in how you should be treated and how you respond when someone takes a trauma-informed approach, and this is one of the reasons I'm starting my podcast, because I was in a place where they had done all of this trauma-informed education. And then when I asked for ADA accommodations, I was denied and said, well, we can't treat you any differently. And your trauma happened so many years ago, you should be over it. That's wrong.
Sure is.
They were not trauma informed for all the talking that they did and, education that they did to staff. They did not embrace the concepts at all.
Yeah.
And I know that that's still happening.
And here's your opportunity to make a difference. So when someone in a position like yours comes rolling into work, because, it's not like terrorist attacks have gone away or mass shootings or any situation in which someone might find themselves in a similar situation to you, at least people know what PTSD is. People know how to treat, memory situations, and maybe there might be more of a component to an accommodation, but even then, like you said, like it's certainly not a guarantee. So it's wonderful that you'll have a podcast that can kind of help people navigate whatever that situation might be for them. It's a huge value add for folks. And again, your lived experience is what's guiding the way.
Yeah. And I don't want people to have to live the way I lived.
Yeah.
If I can help people find resources and advocate for themselves, so that they live a better life, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. And to me, that's like always the mark of someone who's going to do successful things with their book, is that where it's not about being on the New York Times bestseller list. It's not about selling 1 million copies of your book. It's about exactly what you just said, and preventing someone from going through the same experience that is completely avoidable.
Yeah. And there are so many resources out there now. Not everybody knows about them.
Yeah.
And I'm still learning about resources so that I can direct other people to, to resources. Yeah.
That's so good. Well, speaking of resources, while we're kind of concluding, can you share what, like the best place for people to find you, to find your book, and then maybe eventually your new podcast?
Well, my book is available on Amazon, and it's in paperback and Kindle. And people can find me on my website, which is www.christianescarpino.net. The podcast is, I don't know, I'll probably be ready in a couple of months to come out, but it's going to be the Trauma Informed Leader podcast.
Ooh, I like that.
There will be a Facebook page for it, and there'll be a link from my regular website to the website pages for my podcast.
Perfect. Very good. Well, I can't wait to see what comes next and what happens next, because you have so many irons in the fire that are manageable because you have a process and a system for them. And I can't wait to see, just all the good work that you're doing. Because even just in the last year or so, I feel like that we've known one another. Like, it's just incredible to kind of see just the strides that you're making, because we were talking about before we hit record, follow directions that, someone gives you a plan and you take action. That is a huge thing. And I can't wait to see what happens next.
Well, I was very lucky to find you and Allie and Bridget, who are all people that have processes and really define, this is what happens next. This is the flow. And I have I like to call a beginner's mind,
Mhm.
so that if I don't understand something, I will just follow it. As long as it's working, I'm just going to continue to believe that it's going to work until it doesn't. But it has worked.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Well, hopefully, I will still be doing this podcast by the time you roll out around with your second book, and we can have a conversation on what is the impact of book 2 on all of the things that we've already discussed. So,
oh, great. Thank
gotta
you.
put a pin in that for the future. All right. Thank you, Christy. I so appreciate your time today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you.